hear me now? I'm going to go a little bit different. As a teacher, educator, I had a hard time thinking I have to stand on this podium and stand still. So I'm going to try walking around, see the screen, and try that format a little bit. Just to reiterate what every presenter has said today, thank you so much for being here today. Saturday afternoon, morning of your time, and educators I know are either back in school or will be going back to school shortly. So we really appreciate that you're taking the time and opportunity to come learn more and hopefully take back some good tools to implement either in your homes or in your schools or community organizations. The title you'll see is The Power of Many, and I wanted to give just a quick background. This last spring semester, I was approached by Pike High School to come and do some sort of high school bullying prevention training with their high school leaders. And high school students, that's sometimes a hard audience to tap into. And how can we inspire and motivate these students to hopefully make a change in their school? And so I developed a mini curriculum, and with the help of my graduate students, we were able to go to Pike and spend one wonderful day with about 25 high school leaders from the freshman year through juniors. The idea is obviously this year they'll be 10th grade through 12th grade and then continually train new freshmen. And we titled it The Power of Many because we know change in school happens when kids want to make a change. And so the idea was individually, they all came with great strengths, and they're already seen as student leaders in some capacity. But when they work together, the power of many is going to create bigger change. And so I thought this is very appropriate today. We have wonderful people here in our audience, and then you are going to take this message back and share. And with the power of many, hopefully we can continue to create bigger changes within bullying prevention. All right, so I used a couple quotes from Margaret Wheatley. I used the text this summer in my diversity and similarity class, so you'll see a few quotes throughout. Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. So again, just in numbers, we can really make a change, I think, in the issue of bullying prevention. Framing today, I always think it's interesting to hear why people do what they do. Why am I interested in bullying prevention? And it's personal. Why in the world am I showing you a picture of an elephant? We've heard numbers today, we've heard statistics, and just real quickly, by a show of hands, how many of you have been the target of bullying? Wow. So when I'm out in schools, numbers look just about like this. The elephant, and I promise Dr. Kinder didn't know, and I'm not the third grade person he was talking about, but in third grade, this was the nickname I was given. My mom said, I was just big boned. This has stuck. Okay, this is a part of my identity, something that I challenged. I was known as the elephant. Through third grade to about seventh grade, my friends, and we'll talk about what healthy friendships do and do not look like, but they got to decide who was in at recess time. It's a personal thing. 30-some years ago, we didn't call it bullying, but it existed. And now we've given it a name, and we have more awareness, just like what we're doing today. So it's personal, and it's something that I'm passionate about. These are my 4 beautiful angels that we'll hear a little bit about them in just a little bit. This is the other reason why I am very much inspired by this. I heard I had a laser. All right, this one, my oldest. We also heard that there's obviously subgroups that are more highly targeted. This child doesn't fit in a subgroup that's highly targeted. But about a year ago, 2 years ago, it was her 8th grade year, I'm the parent that got to intervene with school. She was the target of bullying, in so much that I watched this child that was a student leader, president of her student council. I'm going to brag a second. Great student, top 10 academically, played varsity basketball as a freshman. This kid isn't somebody that fit in those subgroups, but she was being targeted so much that I watched this self-confident young lady crumble in front of me. Scary as a parent. I have counseling skills. I knew what to do, but all of a sudden my counseling hat flew off. I was parent, and I was watching my child kind of go into a depression mode. So I intervened as much as I could. Thankfully, I have the knowledge and skill set to be able to do so, but I always worry about those parents that don't have that. Who's the advocate for their child? So it personally affected my family. And so that's the other anchor to the reason why I do the work that I do. Obviously, all the students in this classroom, this is a nice blurry picture of maybe a guidance lesson, is what I'm hoping is going on. But school counselors out there, I was able to work in middle schools. I'm able now, I get the fortunate ability in higher education to work in multiple schools. Love the work that I do, love the interactions that I have with students. But ultimately, we're all here for those other kids. So I say those are the three things that really anchor me to the bullying prevention work that I continue to do each and every day. Real quickly, I just wanted to talk about terminology. We've heard from all the speakers, different terms that are used. As we've evolved in bullying prevention education, I have chosen to use a few different terms, I think, than some of the presenters have done so. So I wanted to tell you what terms I'm using so it's consistent throughout the rest of my presentation. I try not to label students as bullies. You're the bully. Because typically then we know the self-fulfilling prophecy, they're going to then continue to act that way. So I've really worked at using the word students that exhibit bullying behaviors, because we're hoping that we can educate them and teach them different ways, different social skills. I use the word target instead of victim, because I feel like that gives them power. A victim is someone that really feels like they're powerless, and we want to make sure that we're empowering all of our students. And then instead of bystander, I use the term witness. And in classrooms that I've watched different empowerment sessions going on, even first and second graders can tell you what a witness is supposed to do because they've watched maybe some law show on TV or heard mom and dad or whatever. They know that a witness is supposed to speak up and tell somebody else what they've seen. So that's the terminology that I like to use and will continue to use throughout this presentation. Okay, the fix it button. Don't we wish we all had a button we would pick, punch and it'd all go away? The problem of bullying, and I put that in quotation marks because it's a problem when my air in my tire is low and I can go put air in the tire. It's a problem when something is broken and we can go to the store and buy something to fix it. There is not a fix for this problem. There is not a magic curriculum out there that we can just go buy and implement and it's all going to go away. This is something that we have to do this work each and every day. And so I really want to reiterate that I think there's some great bullying programs out there, but I feel like that our schools can do this on their own. By knowing their school communities, their children, their parents, that they can really put programs in place that are going to address the needs of their specific schools, and that as parents, we also can be doing that in our homes. All right, we talk about advocacy and empowerment. Specifically when we talk about parents, reality doesn't change itself, we need to act. So we know there's a problem, but we have to have action behind that. And I put the comment under there, you are the expert, meaning parents. I've been fortunate to be able to work with the prosecutor's office on some of the truancy initiatives that they've put in place. And time again, we try to give that message to these parents. Educators are experts in their content area in the education field, but we're not experts on your child. You know your child better than anybody else, just as I felt like I knew my own child better than anybody else. So we want them to come and advocate for their child. We know that you know the ins and outs, the trigger buttons, whatever it may be. You're the expert. So we really want to encourage, above and most, that these parents step up and really are the best advocate for their child. So what about my child was bullied? What do parents do? So these are a few guidelines, and this isn't the only things that need to be added in this list, but we need to make sure we're listening to our children. What are they telling us? Believe them. Don't second guess them. Believe in their story. Listen to what they're saying. Provide empathy. Assure the person, make sure they stay calm instead of we get excited. Absolutely, these are our kids. We love them. We're going to get upset. We're going to be passionate about this. Use feeling words. All of these things kind of really struck true when I think about my oldest one that you saw. As I shared, I experienced some bullying growing up, and it could have been easy to say, oh, it's just something that's going to happen. It'll go away. Look, I turned out okay too. And really minimize her experience. We don't want to do that. We want to listen. We want to let them tell their story, encourage them to communicate with us, provide empathy, use feeling words, try to anchor that with, it seems like you're really angry, it seems like you're really sad, whatever it may be, to help anchor what they're telling us with some feeling words. Try to make sure that you document as much as you possibly can. Ask some questions. Where did this happen? Who was involved? Was there anybody else? Were there other students that saw this? Potentially, were there other maybe coaches that saw this? Where were you at? Provide as much information as you can and document this. It's really important. The next step is contacting the school, and David gave some great information about when we reach out to schools. Schools are going to ask these questions because they're going to then continue on with an investigation. And as he said, I was responsible as a school counselor with those investigations, and it can take a lot of time because oftentimes there's many parties to speak to. So give the schools a little bit of time to investigate that and then obviously get back with you. But again, it's so important to please document it. As parents, I suggest, and I try to do it myself, to have maybe a parent folder where you write down meetings with students or meetings with your students, teachers, school educators. If you've called the school, on August 3rd at 10 a.m., I called and talked to Mrs. Smith about, and then you have a written documentation. Schools do a great job of documenting. As parents, we need to make sure we're also doing a great job of documenting the outreach that we do with our schools. Make sure you try to act as a partner. As I said, be the expert on your child. Okay? Help them together create a plan that's best for your son or daughter. And then you want to make sure you're continually checking in with your child. It's really important. We heard that bullying is something that happens time and time again. So because we think that it's been resolved, and hopefully it has, don't make the assumption that it's not going to happen again. And especially cyber, check in on the Twitter accounts. I understand, as I said, that my 4 kids are 15, 13, 11, and 9. It can be a full-time job to check Twitter accounts and all of that, but it's important as parents to stay up to date on what our kids are doing online. Excuse me. Be persistent. If you're not getting the answers that you want, please be persistent. Keep contacting the school. Something that I recently talked with a parent about is find a champion. Most of the time, you have developed a relationship with someone at that school. It may or may not be your current son or daughter's teacher, but it's maybe a past teacher, a school counselor, a vice principal, the principal. Find a champion that's going to be able to be your listening ear and go to that person and help them work together to resolve this issue. My child, not my kid. So we're talking about the phone call that I never like to make, and I doubt any educator likes to make, is when you get a call home and say your son or daughter was the person doing the bullying. It's not a very fun call to make, but it's really, really important. One quick statistic about students that have been identified as exhibiting bullying behaviors or had been labeled bullies during their school experience. The National for School Safety Center said 60% of students that have been identified as school bullies by the age of 24 have a criminal record. That's a huge number. And so we need to make sure that we are identifying these kiddos, but also then doing some support work, okay? And we're providing them that education that they so desperately need so they can be great people in our society. But as a parent, that phone call's not a fun one to receive because we want to defend. No, not my kid, right? Well, we want to make sure as a parent when you talk to your son or daughter that you make sure that you say that this is not acceptable behavior. And it's a behavior. We're not going to say you're a bully. Again, I really am big on not labeling a child. It's the behavior that's not acceptable. What is going on in your home? We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a couple slides, but make sure it's consistent. Your home environment is consistent with the expectations that we have in other environments, such as the school environment. Examine what your child is exposed to. The online pieces, what TV shows. When I say the word reality TV, I don't think I need to say much more. What kind of things are our students watching? What video games are they playing? So what are those messages that they're receiving? Is it normalizing this behavior? If so, we may need to change what our children are exposed to. As parents, we want to make sure, and as adults around these children, that we're modeling that behavior. Sometimes, I was sharing with someone today, my kids are involved in a lot of athletic events, and they're in different sports, and I sometimes am pretty appalled by the coach's behavior. And so I've had to have some uncomfortable or courageous conversations, as we like to say, with some coaches, because some of the language that they've chosen to use. And so make sure as adults we're modeling appropriate behavior. Again, that's setting clear expectations, following expectations, encouraging involvement in extracurricular activities, really important. We want to make sure that the kiddos feel connected to school. That school connectedness is really important. Help them find strengths. Talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Make sure we still continue that communication with school personnel. What are our school personnel seeing? What are the teachers observing? If your child has been found as part of a bullying incident, obviously someone has observed something. So what else is going on? What are they doing if they are involved in sports? If they're in the drama club? Are you noticing this in other areas of their life? So have some communication, reach out, try to find like the big picture is what I would recommend. Focus on empathy. I'll talk towards the end about empathy development. That is my core belief, that if through empathy education, we can really help minimize bullying because it becomes unacceptable behavior. Home. So talk a little bit about siblings and what our home environment, obviously when I was joking about my 4 little angels, my home environment, even though the work that I do, I still have a lot of nice family discussions about what is appropriate things to say and appropriate places to put your hands. So does this look familiar, parents? Or this, my favorite. This is my brother and I in the back seat, the imaginary line, you can't cross it type thing. So what is your home? What is the home environment? Often too many times what's going on at home is spilling over in our schools. And I just want to take a quick second to tell you about a student of mine. He was a 7th grade boy, and I'm going to give him the name Joe. Joe was referred to my office multiple times, and because of the repeated incident nature, it did become a bullying incident. So I made that phone call home to Joe's mom, and Joe said, "Oh, that's just boys. That's just how boys are. Boys being boys." And I said, "Well, you know, our school policy," and I explained the policy of bullying and that we were going to be meeting and kind of what my school's policy was in the next steps. And so she said, "Well, that's just what happens at home. That's how Joe and his brother behave. I mean, that's just the way it is." And I thought, okay, it kind of was sitting with me. And so I had told Joe I'm going to bring him back after I talk with Mom. So I brought him back in my office. And I said, "You know, something that came kind of interesting to me when I was talking to your mom on the phone." I said, "She mentioned that you and your brother have a lot of, I think she called them disagreements." And it wasn't that I got those words out of my mouth. There was tears in Joe's eyes. And the floodgates opened, and we continued to have a really great conversation about what home looked like. And he was the target of some pretty severe sibling bullying. And in turn, he was coming to school and then putting power over others, and he became the bullier. And too many times we see that, this target, bullier target, that because in one environment they may be in one position, and in another environment they want to act out and be in another position. And so that was a real aha moment about what happens at home and what kind of behaviors are normalized, then sometimes show up in other places. There's obviously normal sibling conflict. Okay, we know siblings aren't going to get along, and we take those opportunities to talk about conflict skills. However, when it's this aggressive behavior, when it escalates, it becomes bullying. And we as a society and as families need to be, really cognizant of this. The University of New Hampshire has done a study, it's pretty recently, I think in the last year, and they examined sibling bullying. The impact on these children's mental health is just the same as the impact of bullying that happens in our schools. Same levels of anxiety, same levels of depression, and the impact on trauma. So this is a real thing to be concerned about. Why do we think maybe parents do this? I'm guilty of it. Sometimes I might be needing to finish up work, and I'm like, we have a higher tolerance, it seems like, when our kids are arguing or they're behaving this way, or possibly that normalization, that's boys will be boys, sisters are going to yell and say mean names to each other, whatever it may be. So parents have a higher tolerance. Sometimes parents label children. Oh, that's the good one, and I have the one that's real ornery. So then we almost, again, that self-fulfilling prophecy, say, well, that's just the one way one's going to behave. So be aware when you start to hear these conversations if you're working with parents. So what do? We model it. Continuous modeling. You've heard me say this over and over. As parents, we need to be aware of how we're communicating with partners in our lives, with other adults in our life. How do we communicate with our own children? What are we saying? What are we saying is normal? Something I have begun to ask my own children is, would you do this at school? And most of the time is, no. You're not going to go like this, as he just did to his brother when you're standing in line. It's not appropriate behavior. So would you be okay watching your kids behave a certain way? And if you went to school and you watched your child in the classroom and you saw another student do the same thing that his brother or sister did, would that be okay? And asking yourself these questions is maybe then starting to think about what your home culture needs to look like and maybe some positive changes that can take place. All right, I'm a big believer, I tell my students all the time, hopefully everywhere you go, you meet people and they can help you add some tools to your toolkit. So here's just some things, my thoughts on this. One thing when I talk with parents, and Brene Brown is another author that I really appreciate, and this is her quote up there. Parents, do you light up when your kids are coming in the room, or do you become, what? Their instant critic or a biggest critic? And sometimes I think we have to be mindful of that. What are we, again, communicating with our children? Are we looking at their strengths? Are we like, oh, why did you not clean your room? Or why is this a 90 on this test instead of a 95, or whatever it may be? And so really being really aware of the language that we're using with our kids. Just a little side note there. So again, on communication. I believe we have, and I was texting my child earlier, but we have relied too much on texting, on emails, picking up a phone and having a conversation. I joke, my husband and I get frustrated with my 15-year-old, just call, we can learn this information so much quicker if you just call. No, I'll just send her a text. But modeling this communication, providing real communication skills is really important. The work that I'm hopefully going to be doing in a few middle schools this year with bullying intervention is training, communication skill training. Kids have sometimes, it's a lost art, and we need to relearn how to communicate with one another. So by asking our students, not the question, how was school today? Fine, it was all right, those one-word answers. Just by tweaking that a tad bit, tell me about your school day. It's a lot more focused. They're going to have to tell you something. We even have implemented sometimes around the dinner table, what's your high and low of today? Why do I ask about the low? Because I need to know about that part of their day as well, so I can help provide any extra support that they may need. Another little strategy, you can take these away if you want, as I call it the 5-to-1, and this came from some asset-based thinking training that I've been fortunate to be a part of, and I've tweaked it just even a little bit more, is that one is what was that one challenge of your day? What didn't go so well? So we talk a little bit about that. And then the 5, I have them tell me a person that positively impacted them, so they're thinking about others. Okay, a person, a place. So it could be in the gym, it could be in Mrs. Smith's room, but what was something that happened in this particular place? And then 3 things that they feel like they did really well today, because that's what, improving their self-confidence, their self-esteem. So 5-to-1 is another communication tool that I've tried to implement, not just with my own kids, but in the kids that I am fortunate enough to encounter and even in counseling relationships. So I have the bucket here. Some of you may be familiar with the book, the Bucket Filler book. A lot of schools, especially elementary schools, use this bucket filling program. So the idea is to fill people up, okay? Unfortunately, I feel like societally, when we watch TV, we're in a society that likes to tear people down because it makes us feel better. And we really need to change the way that we really look at that. I feel like we, as parents, sometimes send our children out at 7 a.m. or 7:30 in the morning, whatever it is, they get on the bus or they're going to school and they're full. Right? They're filled up. Well, at least we hope so. And it's not too long that they step in a mud puddle and they get their pants dirty and that bucket's a little bit emptier, and then so on and so forth. And they might come home to us half full, quarter full, maybe empty. And we as parents, we as adults in their lives need to find ways to continuously fill their buckets. Find their strengths. Focus on their strengths. If you see areas of challenges, we can still help find ways to provide some support and be bucket fillers. Recognizing talents. This is also really important for all kids, but especially I think I was talking about getting your kiddos connected in extracurricular activities. When we recognize our talents of our children, we can help make those connections. You notice they're really good at public speaking, or they're really good at being the class clown, and they like getting attention. Maybe drama is their thing. Maybe you hear them singing. You get them connected to music. Maybe you notice that athletics is their thing. Whatever it may be, recognize their talents and then help find connections to get them involved. It's another great part of building resiliency skills and improving their overall school connectedness and community connectedness. So empathy. In the world of counseling, there would not be a relationship or any movement towards change if we didn't have empathy. And it's a hard concept sometimes for my students to wrap their mind around, so I know it's not an easy concept. But how can we encourage our students, our children, to really fine-tune this skill? And as I said, I'm a big believer that this is really at the core. If I think about what I'm going to send out to the world and put on Facebook or send in a tweet, put on Vine, whatever it may be, cyber world, if I think about their reaction and how that's going to make them feel, I'm going to probably be less likely to do that. If we can help teach kids empathy, and the research shows you can teach empathy. Yes, some people are born maybe with more higher levels of empathy, but we can teach empathy. I feel like this is really where we need to focus a lot of our work. The bullying intervention program that I talked about, this will be the core of it. We have to be able to help connect what their actions and how they're connected to others. When we are able to do that, I think we're going to be able to make some significant change into the culture of schools, into the culture of homes, and overall create a seismic change when we're talking about bullying prevention. Just a few other skills. As adults and parents, we can role play possible situations. I think that's something that, as a school counselor, I was able to provide some of these opportunities. What is it going to be like? What are some possible scenarios? I think we've heard a few today. What's it look like in a classroom? What's it look like in a cafeteria? If you're approached by someone that says this or does this, or you receive a tweet that says this, what are you going to do? Provide them real structured opportunities to role play these situations. Because we know when we practice something, we feel a little more confident about doing it. Make sure our kids know how to ask for help and who to go to ask for help. Hopefully in the school environment, any adult would be someone that they could go to. However, we know, working with kids, that sometimes they feel a lot more comfortable with certain people. And so we're going to want to make sure that these kids know how to ask for help, what to do if they're put in a situation, whether they're the target or whether they're the student that is the witness of a bullying situation, so that they have that information. I'm a big believer. I love conflict resolution. I'm involved in helping train peer mediators. So this is a really life skill. I mean, conflict is it is healthy. We need to learn how to be in a conflict situation and to be able to do that in a way that is appropriate. But conflict is not bullying, and it's really important that we understand that. However, we will need to make sure that our students are equipped with the language to be able to enter into a conflict and to be able to resolve that in a peaceful manner. Safe internet habits. I kind of talked about that a little bit ago. Make sure we know what our kids are doing online. Have passwords, monitor that. I think that we had a great presentation about that. Hopefully you took away some great tools to add to your toolkit for that. And then healthy friendships, kind of what my story said. They weren't really my friends when they were telling me when and when I couldn't play with them, right, in 3rd grade. I think we need to be aware of who our kiddos are hanging out with. Who do they deem to be their friends? And are these positive people that are building them up, people that are filling their buckets? Are these friendships that are something that's going to be helpful to them? Or they maybe, there's also a bullying circle I didn't post today, but sometimes a bullier has people around them that is titled henchmen. So are they a part of a group that's targeting other kids? We need to be really, really aware of who our children are spending time with, both in the virtual world and in person. So I am going to be closing here, and I just really wanted to reiterate the power of many, and I really believe that one single voice can lead to multiple voices. And end with the Margaret Wheatley quote, "There's no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about." And I think that that's what today meant for me. I'm with a community of people that really, truly care about change, and I'm very appreciative of that. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you to the Prosecutor's Office and all the wonderful people, the great work that you do, not just with bullying, but you do a great job with prevention and reaching out to families.